we're going to do hashketball review. What I want to do is kind of go over the instructions, explain sort of the thought process, the logic, what we're going to be going over, and then ultimately explain like a lot of things that are kind of happening in here. I know for some of you who've like flown through the labs like champions, it's been a while since you've seen hashketball, and I think that we like kind of forced you to discuss it earlier. Yeah, cool. All right, let's do this. What I noticed is a lot of students love shortcuts, which is great. Please use them. So if you see me do something and I don't highlight what it is or how to do it, feel free to just shout out, like, hey, how'd you do that? And then I will let you know, right? Like, so I might do something like this, like, hey, let's get into it. Boop. And you're like, whoa, what just happened there? So like right there, you have the file tree on the left. And sometimes you don't really want the file tree, right? You kind of just want to see more of the code. If you hit Command and the /, which is above the return key, it'll just hide and display the file tree. Cool. For show. For shizzle. Word. Yeah. All right, let's keep going. Great news! You're going to an NBA game, right? The only catch is that you've been voluntold to keep stats for the game, right? So you're going to fork and clone this lab. Cool, good deal. Who here, and I just want to get a feel for it, who feels very comfortable with hashketball? Like, Evans, just fly through this. I got you, fam, MBD. Or break this down Barney style. All right, so number one, right, choice one is I feel great. Just go ahead and fly through it. I'll ask questions if I need to. Or ELI 5, which is short for explain like I'm 5. Somewhere in the middle? Yeah, all right. In that case, cool. So I won't really like kind of go through this then. I'm sure you've just talked about this, yeah? Non-rhetorical. Yeah, you just talked about this and all the deliverables? All right, so I won't waste your time with this. Powerful. See that? I just saved you all of 3.5 minutes. Probably, I don't really know. So let's talk about like this file, right, and what we're given here. So this require pry. Who here feels comfortable with what pry is, requiring pry, what that is, why that's there? Cool. Does anyone want to explain or? Sure. Say again? Yes, please. Yeah.
It just sort of like drops you into like where you put it. Like it's like as if you pause the Ruby right there. It gives you debugger, as they call it. And you can check any variable that's in this run statement and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you're like a really deep hash, very useful.
Sweet. Yeah. So what require pry is, right, is pry is a gem, right? Does everyone understand what these gems are? Gem is just basically a code that somebody else wrote that you could download right into your computer, so you can use it quick, fast, in a jiffy. Yeah? And pry, what it does is it allows you exactly what he said, and that's like pause code immediately. But the trick to it is that the code has to run and it has to execute. So for example, right, if I were to just puts right here, hey, it's your boy, no big deal. What do you think would happen? How do I actually run this file and then ultimately see what's going on over here?
What editor are you in?
I'm in Atom. Yeah.
Can't help with that.
That's okay.
Ruby hashketball.rp.
Right, and so if I'm inside what is known as like the terminal, right? So this is the terminal, and this basically is, have you seen this before, Finder? It allows you to kind of like go through all your files. Oh my God, it's a mess, right? Instead, what you can do is you can like be like hacker man, like old school style, and you like get into this terminal, you can see everything that's in there. So if you type ls, it's just gonna list out every file that's in this folder. Cool. And then ultimately, if I wanted to, see, we have a file called hashketball. If I were to put Ruby, hashketball, if I just type out some of it and I hit tab, and there's no other character that kind of follows that matches. So like if I put HASH, right? Is there any file here or folder that has HASH? All right, there's just the one. If I hit tab, it'll realize, oh, hey, you're probably looking for just this one. Cool. So if I run it, hey, it's your boy, right? Noise. Cool. Why is it that like none of this kind of like ran? I don't see any of this. This is just a method, right? Right, this is just a definition. How would I actually display all the information here? How would I call or invoke this method? I have to call on it, right? So here we've defined this method called game hash. If I wanted to, all the way at the end, I could put game hash. And then what I could do is, boop, and I could see it all, right? So in the terminal, if you want like, and the thing is like you got to get kind of fast at this. If you want to run the last code that you ran or like see the last things that you type, you just press up on the arrow key. So like boop, 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 boop. All right, let's not get too into that because I might have wrote some things in there and I was like, maybe not for this class. Cool. Great. So there's no questions on like kind of how to like see this, right? All right, let's get into it. Cool. What's the first thing you guys do when you get like a brand new file? Well, rather like you're working on a brand new lab. I'm sorry, that's like poor phrasing. You're working on a brand new lab, right? What's the first thing you do?
CD into it.
Right, like you clone it and then you CD into it, and then what do y'all do? Some of you said read the README, right? Follow the instructions. That's what I heard. But what I really know some of you do is, let's be real, y'all just run learn. Yeah, right away. You're like, oh my God, what is this? What should I do in this lab? How do I understand it? No, pass the test, get the green light, pass go, collect $200, and I'm good to go, right? Cool, let's actually just do that then. Let's play it by ear. So if I run learn, right, what does learn do for us? It runs all the tests. Ben? I don't want to interrupt you. You had something?
It just looks for tests in the directory and runs any that exist. Tells you labs are good. It's basically what it said.
Yes? Did you want to add to that?
Well, also you can do other things. You can submit your tests, your code to Git and everything. Yeah.
Also correct.
There's
The person behind you. Did you want to add to that?
I don't
You know, some of you are wearing your name tags, some of you are not, so this is a little tricky. That's okay, don't worry. What I'll do is I'll do this move over. Yeah, if you want to dodge my pointing, it's kind of sketch. All right, cool. So if I run learn, it'll be the same as if I ran what is known as rspec. You guys familiar with rspec? Okay, so like not rhetorical. Like rspec? No? Okay. Plus, thank you. So rspec is the testing library that we rely on in Ruby. So what you'll see here is, if I bring up the file structure again, that command slash, what I'll see is, boop, 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 inside the spec folder, it'll see hashketball spec. And so these are actually what all the tests are. And so you can see exactly what the tests are kind of looking for, the arguments that it's passing in, and then basically kind of like the directions like how to pass this test. So if I run rspec, learn will actually run rspec for you, and then it will check to see how many tests you pass. If you pass all the tests, it'll do some cool Git stuff. It'll open like a pull request for you, and then you get all the green lights, and then you move on to the next lab. So learn is like an additional thing on top of rspec. If you didn't want to run it, what you can do is you can just run rspec, and it'll kind of run all your tests for you. All right. Some of you, when you run like learn or rspec, it's frustrating because like the first thing you see is a lot of failed tests, right? So when you scroll through, how many of you have done this? When you like scroll through, you're like, oh snap, I passed it, and then you scroll through, like, oh snap, I passed it. It's like a little frustrating to kind of see. If you were to run rspec, right, there's something called flags, and that is you can run dash dash, right, fast dash fail. What this will do is it will run all the tests, and then the first test you fail, it will stop. And that way you'll only kind of deal with one test at a time. Cool? So in terms of like options, are you guys familiar with what I mean by options or these flags? Who feels comfortable with them? Yeah? All right, we'll move on then. Bloop.
I have one question for you.
Just kidding. Say again?
For this environment, if we're not necessarily in learn code, will learn still work? Is that a little variable for Ruby or?
Learn will work globally for you because you've gem installed learn. So at some point you did this. Like even if it was like in the pre-work somewhere. So that means that in your environment, in your computer, there's a gem for learn. And that gives you access to the command learn inside the terminal. Yo, I'm not crazy, right? Chet Vicky? rspec.
Dash dash
Oh, fail fast. I put fast fail. Oops, embarrassing. Embarrassing. It should be fail fast. There it is. Powerful. Cool. So why do I see, hey, it's your boy here? Sure. Right. So what it'll do is, look, in here, in hashketball spec, it's just running this folder. It's running this file. So if I get rid of this, right, it should not run this anymore. Cool. So if we're familiar with this like binding pry, if I don't really know what to do, what I can do is I can put a binding pry sort of anywhere I want in my code because it's just Ruby, right? Once you sort of get out of this mindset that like, oh my God, this is somebody else's code or all this code is pre-written there and I can't touch it, like, oh, it's fine, don't worry. You can always undo, you know, a little Command Z action, you're good to go. So don't be afraid to like play with things and break things. So if I wanted to, what I could do is I can see this, right? The first thing I see is this like failure, cool, expect this num point scored, Jeff Adrian, to equal 10. And what's the actual error? What went wrong with this? Right, there's something called undefined method num scored, num point scored. Yeah? How can I fix this? Yeah, just make the method, right? So in hashketball, all the way at the bottom, I can just do def num points scored, boop, boop, and end. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to write something, and then I'm going to test it. I'm going to write something, and I'm going to test it. I'm going to write something, and I'm going to test it. Trust me when I tell you that this is the right answer. This is the move. This is the way. Because if you write a lot of code and something goes wrong, guess how many lines of code you got to debug? A lot. Right? If you write one thing at a time and then you debug it and something goes wrong, you'll know for a fact it was literally just that last line that you wrote. Right? And so if we take a look, if I were to run learn again, just kidding, boop, boop. I now see a different error. Right? Because I know for a fact that the first time this failed was because there was no method called numPointScored. I just made that method and I tested it, and now I'm getting a different error. So errors are your friend, right? It tells you a lot of what's going on and kind of like what to do next. So here I'm seeing wrong number of arguments given. Wrong number of arguments. Given 1, right? Expected 0. That's weird. What does that mean, and how can I fix it?
It's like saying you tested it, they tested it with the argument just created like your function has no parameters, so it's expecting 0.
Yeah, exactly, right? So what he said was, when I ran the tests, right, the test put in 1 argument, but when I made the method, right, how many arguments is this method expecting right now? 0, right? Which makes sense because it expects 0, but it was given 1. And where is it given 1? Where can I look at that? Right, the hashketball spec. So here I can just troll through and bloop, 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 bloop. It'll even tell me, right?
It says it right there, Jeff Adrian.
Yeah. So I can see right here, num point scored, Jeff Adrian, to equal 10. Here, num point scored is being passed in 1 argument, which makes so much sense, right? So how can I fix that? Bloop. Right, I need to make sure that this takes an argument. But what would you want to name it? Should I just name it X? Is that a good argument name? Whoa, that was intense. But yeah, that's like a terrible argument name, right? So let's put in player name. Player name. Cool. So what happens when this function gets run? What happens when this method executes right now? Nothing, right? There's no logic in here. But what I can do is I can test it, right? So how would I test this? How would I want to test that Bad Johnson right there? Yeah, right? So what I can do is, if I know that this method is being invoked, this method is being executed, I can pause it right in the middle of it and kind of test what's going on, right? So if I put binding, oops, binding.pry, what would happen? Yeah. It's very, very fancy for like a day 1. You guys are a powerful class. So this is what I'm assuming is going to happen, right? I'm running this rspec. The second it hits this expect and then it runs this method, it's going to pass in this argument. It's going to go back to this file, and it's going to run this method. And because this method's executing, I see binding pry here, it's going to pause it right here in the execution. So if I were to do this, bloop. Cool. I'm in this binding. Are there any questions as to how I got to this binding, or why would I put this in here? Just going back to the powerful questions that you can ask.
You pretty much use it to make sure that there aren't errors in your code and it's actually going to where you want. Like if you run an if statement and then maybe, you know, it's never reaching that if statement and you're wondering why, you might want to check and see if you're reaching your if statement.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. And so what you said was, this is a great way to test, like if I'm in like a conditional, like if like player name is equal to Jeff Adrian, maybe do something or whatever, right? So what is player name right now as we know it based on what we just went through? If I know that hashketball spec will invoke and execute num point scored with Jeff Adrian, what should I expect player name to be right here? Who says Jeff Adrian? Who says empty string? Who thinks I'm trying to trick you? Not yet. Not yet. You must really know me.
I have a sticker.
Powerful. All right. Yeah, if I check out player name, it's going to be Jeff Adrian, which makes sense because it's being invoked with the argument of Jeff Adrian. Right? So what this is trying to say is I expect that when I invoke num point scored and I pass in Jeff Adrian, I want the return value to equal to 10. Right? That's how I'm reading this test. Are there any questions on that? All right. Sorry, it's like the first lecture. I'm just trying to feel you guys out as you're probably trying to like understand me. So if it's a little slow, you just let me know. I'm like, yo, speed it up. Slow poke. Yeah?
So if you did player name dot last, would it show as the last person?
Player's name dot last.
No, player name dot last. Because it's not just to show Jeff Adrian, right?
Well, here's the thing, right? Remember, I'm invoking this method with just this string in here. So if I ask, hey, what was this invoked in? What was passed in as an argument? It should just be Jeff Adrian.
But are there other people in the, like,
No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
So like, that's the first one it looks at, right? And then it has to look through all the other ones. That's what all those other lines are for.
Mm-hmm.
so every time you exit and it has like generate a new name going through the list?
That is exactly correct. Every time it will run this, and then it will run this, and then it will run this, and then it will run this, all the way until the end. And then you get the green lights, and you start high-fiving left and right, you know, like a champ. And so it's just running each one individually. Yeah? Does that answer your question? Okay. Assist, plus plus. All right. Cool. So we have Jeff Adrian here, right? So what are we actually trying to do once I'm here? I know that the argument will be called in with Jeff Adrian. So what do I actually want to do? If I get something like Jeff Adrian, right, and the method is called number of points scored, what would I be looking for? Right, I'd be looking for like points, right? Whoops, just kidding, points. So how would I be able to get to points with the information of Jeff Adrian, knowing that I have access to this like game hash? So if I go back here, do I have access to the game hash? Cool, it's like all in there, right? Just the way that the Ruby scope is working. If you hit spacebar, it kind of goes through as opposed to like trying to scroll your mouse or press down. If you hit spacebar, it just goes like page at a time. Boop, boop, boop. So you hit the end, and then you can just press Q.
Noticing the difference between your game hash and mine, and maybe that's a mistake on me, but under the player's key, you have an array. I think I have a hash, and I think in the lab specs, it asks you to create a hash with the player names as the keys and the stats as the values. Do you guys have that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what does it say?
So So if you go to the like the lab instructions, it says let's see. Yes, so the player's key points to a hash of players whose names as strings are the keys to a hash containing their stats.
Yeah, I remember that.
The player's key points to a hash of players' names.
Yeah,
Yeah, you have an array of other hashes.
right. In the instructions, it's a hash of hashes. instead of
Yeah.
an array.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you want me to change this to some sort of hash?
Yes,
The whole, yeah.
the whole thing. And the keys are going to be the player names, and the values are going to be a hash
So it's gonna
containing the
yeah.
attributes.
Oh, so this is a hash, and then it's player name.
So you look them up by the names instead of like,
Oh, okay, cool. How many of you solved it that way? With like the hash? Powerful. All right, so check it out. You ready? This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna do it this way, only because if you've already solved it that way, let's just check for understanding and see, hey, if your data structure is just slightly different, let's see how that might affect our solution, and then ultimately, like, check for our ultimate understanding of what's going on here. Cool? Does that work? Nice. It's called being a bad sport. I like it. Yeah? All right, let's do it. But thank you for that. Yeah. Huh. Would you look at
I
that?
did make that mistake the other day. It is, yeah, it does sound like you kind of want to make an array.
I mean, it could be whatever you want, right? The idea is that you just iterate through if it's a hash or it's an array, you can figure it out. So let's do that. Huh?
Is there an advantage to using one over the other?
If you really want to get into the weeds of like computer science, there is a faster lookup in a hash in terms of like the way the computer will look things up. Also, if it's an array, you have to like iterate through. If it's a hash, then you can just pass in like if this was a hash, I pass in Alan Anderson. If it was one of the keys, it'd give it to me right away.
And if you have like 100 million things, that's huge.
Cool. All right, so let's just figure it out from here then, right? So what I want to do is inside this hashketball, what I would like to do is somehow get access to all the players, right? That makes a lot of sense for me. Like I'd like to get access to all the players because I have one player name, and then inside the like array or whatever it is, I have this player name. I can look up that particular player. And then from there, get those stats. Wheel of Fortune. Right? That's really kind of like the idea here. So for me, what the most important thing is not necessarily like that everyone here is like this coding guru, wizard. That's not really how like development works. What it is just this process right here. This is all coding boils down to. If you can break down what you want to do and you have a really good process, the rest of the code you could just write. It's like, can I figure out what I need to do? If I know what I need to do, then I just have to write the code for it. And if I don't know how to write the code, hit up my boy Google. You know what I'm saying? All right, so I need to get access to all the players, right? How can I get access to all the players? Can you guys see this hash? Is it fine? Okay, what if I did this? Or this? Or this? Is it getting dicey in the back? It's cool? All right. It's tough. Like when it's that blown up in my face, it's like, it's hard to see. All right, cool. So how can I get access to what I need to get access to?
So you gotta iterate for a few levels.
Okay.
So the top level is an array that is a hash with two keys, home and away. So you want
Home.
to iterate through those key value pairs first.
Okay. So let's do that, right? Right now I have game hash, right? Oops. Game hash. Cool. Nice. Let's just do this. I have game hash, right? And then what did you say we needed based on this?
So you could look at like game hash home, the symbol.
Game hash home. Sure. And what would that give me?
It will give you a hash with team name, colors, players as the keys.
Cool. You guys are tracking, following along? Right. So if I put game hash at a key of home, it'll give me all of this. So far, so good. Sweet. Okay. Then what?
Then we want to look at players, which is another symbol.
Players. Sweet. It's powerful. Huh? You said gains?
No, I said thanks.
Oh,
Thanks.
thanks.
Powerful. Yeah, and then you can iterate through that to get all the players.
Right. So if I were to go through game hash at a key of home, that gives me another hash. Right? I could see that, right? Boop. Right there, that curly boy. If I go through one more level, I see players. What's the data structure here?
Array.
An array. It's so important that you're always understanding the data structure that you're working with, right? Like I think you already pointed out, like, hey, wasn't that supposed to be a hash? Like, psych, just kidding. It's an array now, right? And you just got to be cognizant of things like that. So I'm at game hash key of home, and then a key of players, and what does that give me? An array. How can I test that if I didn't see it? How can I test to see if this is an array or a hash or a string if I didn't actually see the object? Powerful, yeah. If I put dot class on it, I know I'm getting back an array. And because I know I'm getting back an array, I should have access to all the array methods on this object, right? I can do a dot each on it. I'm going to do a dot map, a dot find, a dot select, anything I want. Cool? All right. Okay. Okay. Sure. So I have home, right? What else do I have? Away. So I need some way to go through both home and away, going into the key of players, and then going through and getting all the players. Right? Is there a way I can transform one array into another array? Or what is this right now? This is a hash, right? So what do I see here? I see home and I see away. Those are the first keys inside this hash. So if I were to go and see game hash and ask for its keys, what would I get?
Simple home, simple away.
But what type of data is this?
Array.
It's an array. So couldn't I go through the home and the away and then ask for its players? Right? So let's kind of like, let's do that then. So I want to get access to all the players. So what I want to kind of do is think about, like, let's see, I have game hash, right? I check out the keys. It gives me an array of the home and the away, right? It's an array. What can I do with this? Kind of array methods would be pertinent or powerful or useful here. Each, right? Each, maybe, like dot each. And then what are each of these? Huh? K comma V would be for like a hash, right? But this is an array. So what are these, right? Remember, what is this right here?
Oh,
What do you want to name it? Like if something was home and away. Location? Sure. I'm super lazy, so I'm just going to drop LOC, like a boss. Is that cool? Noise, noise. All right, so I see this each here. I definitely don't want to forget to put my end because I'm a dirtbag and I always forget to do that. It's terrible. Why didn't this highlight? Cool, there we go. All right, so this is the power of like a text editor versus writing all your code in like Microsoft Word or like TextPad. Ugh, would have been rough, right? Okay, all right. So I have location, right? What is useful for me about location? What is it? It's a key. LOC is a variable. What is it exactly? If you don't know, what we could do is we could take the binding pry. If you take a line of code and you highlight it, if you hit Command, Control, down or up, it'll just move it for you. Powerful. So instead of like copy and pasting, old school, you just start moving it around. It's Command and Control. If you hold both and you press up and down, it'll just move that block of code. Yeah? So if I have a binding pry here, I know that if I run this code, it'll stop right here, right? Yes, no? Cool. So the file's called hashketball, and I see num points scored. So let me exit out of here, bloop, 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 and let me run rspec fail fast again. Cool. So I know I'm in the num points scored method because the tests kind of invoke that method. And then I'm in the game keys, game hash.keys each. I'm in the location. I'm in this binding pry here. Do I have access to LOC?
Yes.
Great. What is LOC? The first would be home, and then what should the next one be? Away. So I have this symbol home, right? And how is this useful to us? What can I do with sort of this, right? Because we talked about the game hash, talked about the keys. What would be useful now? Okay, right. That's very useful. Absolutely. So how would I write that? Like going into, yeah. Right. If I put game hash passing in LOC, I could see what I'm actually supposed to be getting. And that is like this whole hash object. From here, what else do I know? What do I need to get into? Players, right? So if I do this and then I do players, what should I get? Right, I should be getting an array of like all the players here at some point. So here we are. I'm getting an array of all the players. Boop, 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 boop. Yeah. So I have this array. Very cool. What else? What else is useful now that I'm doing this dot each? Well, I want to get access to all the players, right? So I want to like make this brand new array of all my players. So what I can do is I can put like new array of players, if I wanted to, is equal to this empty array.
Why do you want to create a new array of players?
Because I want to get access to all the players. Sure. What would you recommend?
I would just use the players that already exist instead of creating them. You could iterate over 2 and
Sure, absolutely. Let's pause real quick. Ready? If I were to do an array 1, 2, 3, right, and I use dot each. So far, so good, right? Dot each do, and then I get this num, right? If I were to take the num and I were to add 1, and I were to end, what is the return value? What do I get?
Array of 2, 3, and 4.
doesn't change anything.
So let's do that one more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3 dot each do. If I were to put num plus 1 and then end, what do I get?
Yeah, it's because it's being passed by reference, and it's only on the instance when it returns it, it doesn't change in the actual array. The array staying is 1, 2, 3. You have to do it as a dot select is the one that turns it into a. I know I'm probably getting it backwards. One's passed by reference, one's passed by the actual array being passed in, where it's actually manipulated. When you do it by pass by each, it's just passing the array in, doing the num plus 1, and then it's just ending. So the array is actually not changing. When you do it by dot select, I think it was, it actually passes the array and does the num plus 1, but it changes the index, the value of the index is related to whatever its num is.
Very close, and I like your
I may have
explanation.
gotten backwards. No one is, that's what it's basically doing. Is that it's just running through it, going, yeah, okay, plus 1, plus 1, plus 1. It goes, yeah, but the array's not going to change.
Absolutely. The key point there is that when I run dot each, right, what's the return value here? What do I see? The original array, right? The array doesn't mutate at all. It doesn't change. So if I go through this entire hashketball array and I run dot each, what actually happens? It does some sort of action, and then it returns the original array. Is that useful to us at all? Am I actually getting access to all the players? Am I like creating a new object that will give me all the players? No. So what I can do, in fact, is do something called what? What did you say? All right, who's seen this before? Collect. All right, so I'm going to explain something here. So collect and map are one-for-one exact equivalent. If I were to tell you a specific preference, I would say map, only because in JavaScript they use map. There's no such thing as collect in JavaScript. But if you use collect in Ruby, good to go. Exactly the same. Cool? So if I use .map, right, because .map will do what? .collect will do what? Right, so let's do this, right? Let's take a look. If I have cool array, and that is equal to 1, 2, 3. If I do cool array dot map, all right, boop, 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 a little do action, a little num action, and then I simply do num plus 1, and what do I get? Right, I get a new array with the mutated data. Map is a one-for-one transformation. What I mean by that is if I take cool array and I do this num refers to what as it regards to the array? What does it refer to?
Each individual variable type.
That's right, it's each individual item within the array, right, as it iterates through each one, right? So if I were to say, I don't know, true, and I were to just end this, what would I get back? It's a one-for-one transformation. I'm going to take that num, and I'm just going to make it true, and I'm going to end. Then it's going to go on the second item, and it's going to go, oh, true, and it's just going to make it true. So it's a one-for-one transformation. That means that if my array is 3 items, and I run .map on it, how many items will I get in this new array? The exact same number. It's a one-for-one transformation.
So is it, like, this probably wouldn't make sense, but like, is it possible to set the, method, or like the body of the method to a variable and then just like request the variable? Like if you wanted to still do
If I wanted to still do each, right, this is kind of what I was getting at earlier. If I still wanted to do each, I would have to like make this brand new array and like shovel it in. Yeah, but if I'm using map, then it's going to return the new array. I basically don't really need this, right? All right, so knowing what I know about map and this one-for-one transformation, what I'm trying to do is iterate through this giant game hash and create this brand new array of just all the players from both home and from away. That's the goal, right? Who feels comfortable kind of like working on this and doing this? If I use map and I kind of go through all of them, I know how to do this. Yeah? All right, so this is what we're gonna do. From right here, I'm gonna pause this, all right, and I'm gonna give you your first sort of like somewhat unofficial lesson on Git. What I'm gonna do is right here, I'm gonna exit. Oop, just kidding. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit git status, right? This tells me kind of like what I've changed, what I haven't changed. If I cd, I do git status. I see that I've made changes in this file called hashketball review. What I can do is I can do git add. If I put dot, this means I'm adding every single thing inside my current folder. I can do that because currently, what do I have inside this folder? Just this README and just this sort of hashketball review. If I want to be more specific, I can add exactly just the file I want or the folder that I want. What I want to do is I've added it, so I've staged it, and it's ready to save. Once I commit and I put -m, the flag -m just stands for message. What I can do is put git commit -m and just put mid review. Cool? I have saved it now, right? But now what I want to do is push this code. So I can git push, and it'll tell me I've pushed this code. Cool. So from here, what I want you all to do is go here. Bloop, bloop, bloop. I'm going to slack it to your class. What I want you to do is take this repo, pull it, and then build a method that will transform that game hash into an array of all the players. Cool? And we'll follow up in like 5 minutes. Yeah? Are there any questions? Boop, boop, boop.
So,
Powerful. All right. So,
so I got rid of the new array thing because we didn't have it.
oh yeah, right? So we can get rid of this because map returns a new array. Powerful.
And then, so you want to access the player array, each player array. So
Okay.
you can do game hash, rope,
Loc.
players, the symbol.
Yeah.
And then that's it. And you flatten it and you're done.
Cool. So remember .map returns what?
An array.
Right, so I can have like players equals to whatever the return value of this is. Cool? And then from there, I can just do players.flatten. Does anyone know why we did this, or did someone come up with a different solution, or does not understand this solution? Yeah?
Why can you do like the brackets and then the colon?
Oh, I'm sorry. This I don't need. Yeah. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and then also, what is flatten?
Okay, cool. So if we take a look at what this returns, it will be an array, and then inside there will be an array of all the players. All right, so what you'll wind up with is we can easily test this by doing what right here? Powerful. I know, powerful. More claps. All right, yeah. So I can easily just run, let's get back in there. I can run rspec --f-f. So this is like the shorthand for fast fail. Fail fast, excuse me. Cool. So I'm back in here, right? I'm back in the pry. So what is players then? Right? That's kind of what the question is. So how can I test that? I just check players. And notice that it's an array. And then what's inside that array? Another array. If I wanted to pull this array out, what I can do is I can do players.flatten, and that will just remove the outside array. So I'm not getting this like unnecessary nested array. So what I can do is just now look to see it's just one array.
You can also just like add 0.
Yeah, absolutely. So another solution is instead of players.flatten, I could see, hey, what's the first item inside this nested array? It'll just give me the first item in there. And so I can just do players at an index of 0 if I wanted to. Cool? All right. So, wow, pry is so useful. Great. So now I have players.flatten. And this gives me what? Right, it gives me access to all the players inside this one array. So far, so good. So what I want to do is I can pull this out into this separate method, this whole piece of logic. So every time I run num point scored, I don't actually have to do this logic again. I don't have to do this every single time I run num point scored. What I really want is just access all the players. So right here, I can define a method called players. And I can just take in all this data. So players is now the game hash.keys. I'm mapping over it. I create a brand new array, and I flatten it because it was that nested array. So now I just have players. So if I call players here, this should just be that array of players. Right? So if I have an array of players, what method do I know that can give me access to that one player? Right? I'm in players. Can I .each? Can I go through all the players? And if that player name is equal to the current player, I can pull them. Right? What else can I do? What other Ruby enumerable do we know where it's useful for finding something inside of an array.
Find index.
Right, I can use dot find, right? So powerful. So like I can do 1, 2, 3, dot find, right? Take the num. Oh, embarrassing. Yeah, let me just try closing that. Pfft, embarrassing. All right, let's get out of there. All right, let's run that again. So if I were to do like 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah, you're right. I got rid of the pry, didn't I? It's all right. We'll go into the IRB. You guys know what the IRB is? Yeah, it allows me to literally just have a sandbox of Ruby. I can play with whatever I want. I can just make an array. And if I run dot find, boop, boop, then I pass in this sort of num block. So what if the num is equal to 2? Then embarrassing. I forgot the do. Oh, cool. If I take the num block, it's equal to 2, and then I end, what should I get?
The second object.
Right. In the same way that if I were to take in something like Chet, powerful, right? Vicky, also very powerful. And then I were to do dot find on this, don't want to forget that. And these are just names. So for each name, if the name is equal to Chet, then I want that name. I want that sort of index, that item in the array. If I end, I'll get that Chet back. Cool? So how would that be useful knowing I have a player name in here and I have an array of players? Knowing what we know about this like dot find method, and I have an array of players, how would that be useful given a player name?
You would search for the player name.
Yeah, I would search for the player name, right? So what I can do is I can just drop a pry. Remember, you just want to like test every single thing, right? So if I were to run this, bloop, 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 I'll be in there. So what is player name again for that first iteration? It's like this Jeff Adrian person, right? Let's just check out players. Cool? And it's an array. So we've got, if I were to iterate through, the first thing I get is Alan Anderson. Then I get Reggie Evans. Oh. Okay. And eventually Brooke Lopez, Mason, Jason Terry. Then I finally get to this Jeff Adrian person. Cool? How would this be useful for me whatsoever? Well, what is players, right? What is players, if I were to take the first index, what is that? The first player, right? So remember, the iteration goes through each one. So I'm currently in my first player. How would this be useful? In the first player, if what? What if the player name, right, equals to, what was it, Jeff something?
Yeah.
Adrian. Is this Ian? Oh, that'll not work. Cool. What would happen? Well, what is this even?
So we get false.
Right? So what if I was like, hey, is this person Jeff Adrian? Cool. Interesting. So if I were to do players dot find do with a name, let's just do name, right? What do I want this name to be? What is name here in this like iterator? It's this whole hash object. What is the first item if I were to do players.find, do this name? What is name here? What would the first thing be? Remember, if I just go through the first thing, I get this whole object. So, what can I do? I probably should want to rename this whole thing. Instead of name, I do like this player object. That'd be a little bit easier. So like naming conventions are very important, right? So with the player object, what would be important here? Right, if I were to check what the player name was, what would I be receiving in every single one? A string of like whoever the player was? I can always double check that to see. Remember where the binding is. I have the player name. I could see, hey, is that equal to player name that I'm receiving from this method? That'd be pretty useful. So what happens if I do that? I get Jeff Adrian, which makes sense. Or not. Let's take the player's hash again. All right. What's the first thing in here? Alan Anderson, right? Remember, in here, I'm going through that giant array of player objects. If I take the player name of this giant array of objects, if I take the player name, what's the first one going to be? Alan Anderson. What's the second one? And then what's the third one? Who knows? Who cares, right? It's going to keep going until it finds the player object if the player name is equal to the player name that I've passed into this method.
Isn't find only supposed to return the first?
Yes, find will return the first instance where the condition is true, right? This is the condition, and luckily for us, we have a bunch of unique player names, so it should never really run into a problem. Doesn't seem to.
You said Jeff Adrian as the
When I run num points scored inside the hashketball spec, remember it's running it with Jeff Adrian the first time, and then it's running with Bismarck Biyombo. Am I pronouncing that? Are you guys any like NBA fans? Bismack Biyombo. I've been a long time. I'm like of the Stephon Marbury, Michael Jordan, Patrick Ewing era. Desagna Diop. That sounds like an Italian dish. Must be good. Either way. Great. So remember, hashketball, it's invoking this method, and the player name is going to be Jeff Adrian the first time it goes through because it's calling Jeff Adrian here. And what I want this method to return is the amount of points this person scored. Yeah? So what I can do is here, given exactly what we just did with this player.find, I can do players.find, passing in the player object, because remember, players is an array of what? Right, player object, player hashes, player hash. And then if the player hash, right, at a key of player name is equal to whoever it is that I'm looking for, then I'm going to find that person, right? Found player is equal to whatever this returns. Are there any questions as to how I got to this .find, what this .find's doing, what it's iterating over, and ultimately what can we do with it? You should be able to answer those questions in your head. Yes? A thumbs up or? All right. So one more time, I'm gonna just stop at each question if you just want to give me the thumbs up, like what the player's method is, what it returns. Yeah? Dot find with this player hash, like what we're going over, each individual player hash. And then if the player hash with the player name is equal to Jeff Adrian, Bismarck, Baco, whatever the player name is, right? It'll find that player object, that whole thing. So I'm just storing into a variable called found player. I found him, or her. And then now, found player is what? What type of data? An array, a string, an integer. It's still a hash, right? With all of that particular player's data. So the found player's data is right here. And what do I want to return? Points, right? So if I just do, all right, look up the player. I done did that. Boop, boop, boop. Boop. I found the player. And now I want to get those stats. So I do the found player. And then I can simply say what? What am I looking for here?
Points.
Right, points. Whoop. Whoop. That's embarrassing. Cool. Are there any questions as to like how we kind of like finished this method, how we approached it, what the thought process was? Feels good about this. Like, yo, I got that. Who feels bad about this? Like, yo, that was terrible. I did not understand that whatsoever. Just a quick thumbs up, like, yo, I got that? Okay, cool. I can see your class is really fast, so we'll just move a little bit faster. It helps if you guys like, let me know, otherwise I'm like standing here like awkwardly, just treading water, you know? Cool, cool, cool. So let's run the test. Let's get rid of this pride, bloop, and let's run it, bloop, bloop. Cool, bloop. There we go, look at that. 4 examples, 1 failure. So is this the same method from before? No, it's a different method, right? So what does that really kind of imply, and what does that tell us about the tests from before? Did they pass or fail? They passed, right? So are there any questions on like how we got to like num points scored and passing all of these? Awesome. So the next thing is going to be like this sort of shoe size, right? So it knows the shoe size of each player. Well, if we really kind of go back and think about our code, right? We have this found player. Do I need to find the player every time I'm in num point scored, or can I pull this out into its own method? Right, so I'm going to do def, right? Find that player. Just kidding. Find the player. And what information does this player need? What does find the player need? Well, I'm just trying to find the player right now. What do I really need? Right, I need like some sort of name. Cool. So if I were to do this, bloop, it's just going to return found player. So I can do this. Bloop. If I pass it in a name, so instead of found player with points, what can I do instead? So instead of found player, right, what I can do is I can look up the player with the player name. And now I have this player, right? So found player is equal to this now. So far, so good? This is known as like refactoring. Like if I like, first I make it work, then I make it sexy. I want to write everything that I kind of need to do, I make it work, and then I pull it out into its own thing if I do not need all of this one logic in this one method. I want every single method to do kind of one thing. That way it's really easy to debug. Right? That's like the idea behind it. So, cool. The next thing says that we need to, say again?
You have to change one of the variables, the player name and name. Right, under cursor up, right, up. Right. There you go.
Oh yeah, you're right, this should be named. Smart, good catch. Cool. So this one says like, what's the shoe size, right? I know the shoe size of each player. If I run a method called shoe size, passing in Jeff Adrian, what do I really need here? What's the piece of information I need? Yeah, 18, very good, yes. right? I need like this whole player object again, and then I'm going to ask for that person's shoe size. So far, so good? So, knowing what I know, right? I'm just going to make another one, def shoe size. Cool. What do I need here? Right, I need this whole thing again. Right, I need to find the player and then ask for that person's shoe size. So can I just do find the player and pass in the name? All right, but shoe size, when they call shoe size, what are they giving him? This name. So shoe size gets some sort of name, and then find the player must get some sort of name. Because remember, if you find the player, it's going to take the name, it's going to go through the player's hash, the player name is equal to the name, it'll return that player. Questions on this? And reusing the find the player method. So practical, so powerful, so legit. Too legit to quit. All right. So now we have found player again. And then in the found player, what information do we have? What can we do to test? All right, we can just drop a binding.pry here. The hardest part of coding is really, where do I want to start debugging, right? What are my assumptions, and what do I not really know? What am I not 100% sure on? And so if you drop them everywhere, you'll kind of like follow through and find out what's going on. So if we were to drop the binding pry, it'll invoke the shoe size method. The binding pry is here. Do I have access to found player? Great, so let's find out. Great, it's somebody named Jeff Adrian. Wow, surprise, surprise. So what is the found player's shoe size? How can I access this? Yeah, absolutely. All right, that'll give me that person's shoe size. Knowing what I know about that, I can just do found player and ask for its shoe size. I'm reusing these methods a lot. Sure.
Why is Ruby like okay if I just try to access like a key that doesn't exist? Like if I say colon shoe size, it just returns nil. It just like doesn't complain. Like I've gotten hit by that before like 4 times.
Yeah, the idea here is that if I have a hash at a key of shoe and it goes to like 10,
Yeah.
so if I put hashy hash is equal to this like key of shoe value of 10.
Yeah.
So if I were to do hashy hash and I were to ask for a shoe, what do I get?
Get 10. Oh, what?
Oops. Oh, God. Oops, I spelled that wrong again. Hashy hash, right?
Yeah.
I get nil.
But
Oh, it's a symbol.
Yeah.
I didn't use the indifferent hash. Yeah, very good. I use shoe, right? I get a value of 10. If I ask it to look up a key that doesn't exist, right, like dolphin, I should get nil. Because it's going to look inside, and it's going to see that there's no key there, so it'll give me
Why
nil.
not just like complain or something? Because like I remember on this lab I typed shoe size. I spent like 20 minutes debugging why I wasn't getting, I was getting nil no class instead of.
It's the way the hash lookup works for Ruby. So it's difficult to say the logic behind the Ruby developers, but if you look for a key that doesn't exist inside a hash, it'll return nil. Cool.
I want my code to break that.
It is much better that the code doesn't break in the long run for scalability. Awesome. Great. Cool. All right, so let's run our spec again. And so what do we have now? What's happening here? Is this the same error as before with the shoe size? No. So what does that tell us about the shoe size? Hey, that's good to go. So now we need like this team colors. Do you guys want me to like finish this? It looks pretty. It's like pretty self-explanatory from here. You guys want to go? Who wants to go over team colors? All right. Who doesn't want to go over team colors? Cool. That's what I figured. All right. So if there are no other if there are no other questions about like hashketball, this review, kind of like what the plan is for Flatiron School, that's really all I have for you today.